All right, welcome back, you guys. And guess who I've got with me? Yes, it's Pam. Pam was with me. And I am always delighted, excited, thrilled to be sharing time with Pam because she's such a dear person. And I know she's so loved by you guys that it's really fun. I don't know if you guys know this, but at my last retreat, Pam and I planned a super fun surprise for everyone there. Is once I got on the stage at the beginning of Saturday morning, and I'm up there talking or whatever, and all of a sudden I pretend like my phone rings. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I got a call. I have to take this. And I pretend to take the call, and there's a huge screen behind me, and all of a sudden Pam's face is on the screen. And it was so great. Everybody, it's so cool.
Really fun.
And
Yeah,
yeah, everybody
surprises.
loved that, Pam. They loved it. So those of you anybody who's been hiding in a hole somewhere who doesn't know who Pam is, Pam is one of YouTube's and the internet's most loved astrologers. So she focuses on she usually focuses on the cycles of the moon, which gives her sharings this lovely structure to follow. So anyway, she presents things in such a wonderful, I think, very clear and supportive way. And I think that's what people really resonate. Wouldn't you say, Pam, that the fact that you always seem to find the pathway through rather than focusing on the dark, you're always trying to bring people back into the light, which is so
Yeah,
beautiful.
and that's what you are superb at as well, Anne. I mean, people comment on it all the time. I love your angel channelings. I watch them every single week religiously.
Thank
I share
you.
them on my social media because
Thank you.
equally, you and they are just so positive, but they're also very practical. And I just love all those sharings. They've been very thorough, consistent, and so loving all the way through. And recently, you bring through the mother of creation, and that's a whole nother
Yeah.
level to the whole thing. So you are equally much loved. I know you've got a very loyal following of people who adore you.
Thank you.
So
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you so much.
it's always
So,
great to share with
so
you.
what spurred our conversation today, other than just wanting to connect, was I heard, of course, I listened to Pam's videos too, and I heard her February 18th new moon video, which and I'm just mentioning,
January.
Oh,
January.
sorry, I'm so bad at dates. This is why I could never be an astrologer. January 18th new moon video, which you can find on her channel. And it spurred me because as she was saying things, I was like, holy moly, this is aligning so bizarrely, of course, but not at all bizarrely because this is spirit, aligning so much with so much that I have received over the years from the angels and the mother of creation. And it spurred me to go back and look at some of those things. So we thought it would be amazing today to get together and to kind of compare notes. And so what I thought I would do is do a brief recap of some of those channelings, which came through, some of them as far away as 2020, some of them much more recently. And then what Pam and I have both been seeing, her in the astrology, and then both of us in the world, and how there is the potential that some of this may be unfolding. And I would say my only danger is when I start to connect the dots, sometimes I get it wrong. And as a matter of fact, even when I look at the message that just came through most recently in November, the assumption I made at the time, now that some time has passed, I look back and I realize, oh, wow, I have more clarity, even in just the last 2 months, more clarity in what was being channeled. So that's my only caveat. I would say when I leap too far ahead, my human self can get in the way sometimes. So I always like to tell people so anyways, but with the help of the channeling and with your astrological perspective, I think we can get closer to the truth. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Really looking forward to this, Anne. We're always spontaneous, so I have no idea where
Yeah.
Anne's going to go with this. So off we
Exactly.
go.
Exactly. So, okay. So the first place I wanted to look was, we have so this is the book I put out of all the channelings are a compilation of channelings that came out from like 2020 and in that 4-year period following 2020. And I wanted to go back to, and it's organized according to topic area. And all of them they're all connected to YouTube videos. So if you're not a reader, there's a QR code. So you can go back and listen to this. But this is pulling on a channeling from July 5th, 2020. And this one is specific about the banking system. And there's several in here about this, but I wanted to highlight in here because I thought this particular one sort of lays out how things might unfold. And it's amazing to me. It feels like such a gift that when I got this, I was trying so hard to understand it. Now that we are where we are, I feel like it is so much clearer because we have so much more information. So it starts out, this is the angel speaking, and they say, the deflation begins with truck drivers forsaking their routes, not driving goods to their destinations. So that begins the process of the hyperinflation of goods. So we saw that, right? That happened really starting in even 2020 with COVID, where the truck drivers they were doing stuff in Canada and they weren't, I know in the UK, you guys had a truck driver thing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I
and a
remember.
farmers thing as well with tractors. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I know there was like 100,000 truck drivers that couldn't come to their work. So truck drivers. So that was kind of giving us a pinpoint to say, here is this period of time was the beginning of a sequence of events that started with that time period where the truck drivers were doing their thing. So then they say, so it was at that moment, it was a hyperinflation of goods and simultaneous deflation in the value of currency, is what the angel said. So that was, and that's what we experienced, where we saw goods got more expensive and money became able to buy less, right? So then they said in this period that we are in right now, they advised basically don't spend much. They were like, save your money if you can. And we should continue to follow that advice, save your money if you can. And then they say it will develop into a crisis after the first. There will be stages to develop, two stages. They say there will first happen an overage of expectations where many people buy up the markets. And this is what we're seeing now. The markets are at all times high. Like I know, how is your real estate market there, Pam? Is
It's
it crazy?
holding up pretty well. The stock market's just absolutely going berserk
Insane?
positively. You know,
Yeah.
up, but the real estate market's holding up pretty well considering the recent government policies, actually.
Yeah.
And I think it will for a little while, and I'll talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And ours here too is, I mean, we're starting to see weakness in it. It's starting to fall, but we've been at these all-time highs. And the stock market, everything has been really, really high. So that is the first stage, is this buying up the markets. And then they say it subsides, it falls, it becomes devastating because so there's this, we have the high and then we have the low. And then they say it develops into a situation where all capital is sanctioned. So this is where it starts to get very interesting, where you can't get access, where you have to reveal where you must reveal the location of your cash stores, unveil that all is not lost. You can have access to the money you have in the bank later. It will be there, recover it later. So, and this is very early channeling for me, so it's not as fluid as what I channel today. This is back in 2020 when I was really just starting as a trance channel. I had been channeling differently before that, and then I started in this new way. So it's not quite as fluid, but that's why it's a little bit harder to interpret, but it's right here. You know, if you look at it, it's right here. And then, so this is, I think, pointing to the possibility that we have a crash. So we've been in this high, which seems like where we are now. We have a crash. And as a result of that crash, the banks close. This is a possibility. This is not 100%. And they've been advising us, the angels have advised us over and over again to keep some money at home, and not like you don't have, if this were to happen, if the banks were to close, it doesn't mean you are going to have to pay your rent or pay your mortgage or whatever because the banks are closed. How would you? But you may need to go to the store and buy some bread. You may need to buy some gas. And if you do that, you're going to want to have not the 50s or 20s that come out of the bank machine. You're going to want to have ones and fives and tens or whatever denominations you guys have, Pam, but low value bills. And so that's what they're referring to here when they say the money, that it's time for you to find your cash stores. That's what they're talking about, is what is the low bills that you've got set aside. I keep spending mine. So I just got some new because I keep, I need that extra $10, but I've refreshed mine. So it's and so during this time period when the banks are closed, they're saying, don't worry, you'll get your money back, but in the meantime, you may need to rely on having that store of cash. So that's the first bit I wanted to share. And any thoughts on that, Pam, before I continue with the next piece of it?
Yeah, it's interesting. Just a quick sort of side note, just to say before I get into this, I'm not a financial advisor.
Yes,
I'm
at all, right? At
an
all.
astrologer. They're a very rare breed, and I'm not one of them. So, and what Anne and I are focusing on here is one particular timeline that is probably
Yes.
more 3D than either of us normally talk about. So,
Yes.
and remember, we have to, in the bigger picture, we have to witness the collapse of the old order, the old
Yeah.
systems. And this
Yes.
is really where this discussion is going. So, yeah, fascinating. That new moon is in Capricorn coming up on the 18th. And
Okay.
Capricorn is the sign most linked to the banking structure.
Mm-hmm.
New moon is at 28 of Capricorn. Now, remember, in 2008, Pluto, which has a 248-year orbit, so it's very slow, you know, it only enters each sign for the first time every 248 years. So it's entering, and the last time actually was when the US was set up, way back in the late 1700s.
Oh my God.
So I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway,
Okay.
so when Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, within quite a short time, within a short few months, we had the banking crisis, September 2008. Also, with this new moon, it's exactly within a degree conjunct the US Pluto. Pluto is about debt, default, and taxes.
Mm.
And that Pluto is already in the second house of the country's chart. And that's to do with the income of the chart, the worth of the country's
Wow.
economy, the
Wow.
value of the dollar,
Wow.
essentially.
Okay.
So that's really interesting that that's happening. And today, I was just saying to Anne, I just picked up before I came online, bank stocks are down because we have record levels in gold, which has gone to $4,600 an ounce, and all-time records in silver. That's now $86 an ounce. Both have gone kind of virtually parabolic recently. And there are reasons for that, which I'll come on to at the moment. But just to stick with that new moon in Capricorn, that's why I felt the banking system was going to be drawn in, because there's some issue, which, you know, because I'm not a financial person, there's some issue between the limited silver supply and the banks in some way, that people have put in their
Yes.
order to buy silver and the banks have accepted the orders, but there now isn't enough supply to fulfill those orders, is my humble understanding.
Yes. And so here's what's interesting is, so back in November, a message came through, and this one was from the mother of creation, who has given herself the name Isla, by the way, which I love, which is like I-LA. She says it represents the first two energies of the universe, which are will and love. So I as an I am, and la like love, which is, I was like, that's beautiful. So anyways, from Isla. And she is, and for people who don't know, she's the mother of all souls, is how she defines herself. So she came through with this message, and this was this one. You can find the whole thing on my channel. November 28th is when this message came through, and it's called Details About the Collapse and How to Thrive Through It. And that's the majority of the message, is about how to thrive through it. Like, by far, this is a very uplifting message, talking about, like, this is such a critical time that we are in, that this is a moment where separation occurs, where people either choose the path of fear or they choose the path of love. And so this is a major moment for us, you know, and it's an exciting moment because we know which way we're going to go. You know, we know which way we're going to go. But the parts I wanted to draw our attention to are, they say, she says, and she says, there is, so what I was just saying, there is within all that occurs the undertow that will divide your consciousness into two planes of acceptance. One will fight in the battle against what occurs, and one will accept what occurs as a pathway toward their own spiritual enrichment. These two choices are available to yourselves. Each one is a valid perception. One leads towards a pathway of constriction, and the other leads towards a pathway of freedom. So this is really leading us, this thing, even though it seems scary, most of these institutions that we think of as like what we need, anything I have learned on my spiritual journey, anytime I think I need something that is outside of myself, is actually a limitation on me. It's actually limiting, because there's nothing we need. We have all that we need inside of us. I once recently had a vision where I looked inside of myself and I saw, it's so funny, but I saw infinite zucchinis coming out of me. I like to garden. So it was like showing me you can create, you know what I mean? Or you can create infinite zucchinis, which I thought was awesome. But okay, so next paragraph, she says, the types of occurrences you can expect to experience relate, yes, to things economic and to the concerns of global empires. So, and then she says, of how this world is currently construed and the way it means to deliver and exchange goods around the circuitous world. So when I first heard that, I thought it was referring to trade, but now I am looking back on that, and in the way it means to deliver and exchange good, I consider that could be currency. Didn't even occur to me at the time, but now I'm realizing that how do we deliver and exchange? The means that we do it is currency. We use the means. She's trying, and I didn't hear it. That's what I mean, is sometimes in the moment I don't hear it as clearly as I do once I have a little more information. But and then she says, there shall be a shortening, and this is about the silver. This is super interesting. There shall be a shortening of, at least I think it is, a shortening of timings that undermine everything. And there shall be an enrichment of some that falters very easily. And as those fortunes cascade, there is a great undertow that pulls many things with it. So I believe what's going on, and this refers to a second message which came in later, which I didn't actually share on YouTube because I didn't have video for it. I just had audio. I shared it into my private group because I didn't have a video. But she talks about in this that that I think, what is this shortening of timings? I think it relates to derivatives. And I didn't understand what derivatives were, but she specifically mentions derivatives and I had to go look it up. I had to actually do research, like ChatGPT. What is a derivative? And I understand it is like a bet placed against a bet placed against a bet. And I am now coming to understand that the banking or banks have taken an enormous number of derivatives, which are like bets against silver. And to the point that they are extremely like, and then silver went up because they were controlling the price of silver. So they felt safe betting against silver.
Yeah.
And to the tunes of billions of dollars is my understanding, like billions, and not just in the US. This is Europe as well. I think this is maybe other parts of the world, that there are many banks that have bets against silver, which they call a short against silver. And these are derivatives, which is like a bet against a bet against a bet. And each time it becomes like the exposure. It's like a Jenga tower.
Yeah.
And so they say that it's a shortening of timings. So this is what's been happening. So a shortening of timing is like, when are you expected to pay a bill? Well, what if the timing, just the person came to you and said, hey, guess what? I don't think you're good for it. I want you to pay it sooner. That's what's happened, where it was a shortening of timing. So we had at one point, I got this hit about silver because it was going bonkers. And I got the hit like maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And then I started watching it, and it was like watching, like almost like if you're driving if you were flying a plane and there was all these instruments and there was one red light up here going beep, beep, beep. Like, what is that? It was silver. And then it started going berserko. And it's like, from then it's more than doubled, I think, in that time period. It's literally doubled. And so then it went all the way up to 80, and then suddenly it dropped from 80 to 70. And so what happened, I actually looked it up because I was watching it really closely at that point. I looked it up. What happened was a shortening of timings. Is that people who were holding those notes, those shorts, said, hey, it's gone up too much. If you want to continue holding the short, either you have to make good and pay your losses, which are billions of dollars, or you have to put more money in to cover, to make your bet, the ratio of your bet back into line with what they will accept. So all the banks had to, at that point, either default or put more money in. And so they were calling the shorts, they call it. That was the shortening of timings. And so that, I think, is going to happen again and again and again. So fascinating. And I didn't understand it. Now that I understand what somewhat what a derivative is. So that is what she was, a shortening of timings that undermine everything. So this is what could then create, if and silver today, Pam, when I just checked before we got on, it's up to 84 now. So even
86. I checked
what?
2 minutes before I got on to
Oh my word,
86.
86. Holy cow.
Yeah,
So
one day it's up by 10%. It's just going crazy. And there are a couple of reasons for that, I think. But yeah.
wow. So this piece about let's see here. And if I can find the piece in there, here's a part of derivatives. She says, there are no such thing as two derivatives that did not like each other. So you can tell she's a little bit more fluid. She jokes around. She's like, and so in other words, what she's trying to say there is that the way derivatives work is that a derivative, you can take a derivative or a bet against another derivative. So you can take a derivative against a derivative against a derivative, and it becomes this insane, like a bet against a bet against a bet. Well, imagine if the middle of that whole crazy tower gets yanked out, and so it becomes exponential. So that's what she's saying here in a jokey way. There are no such thing as two derivatives that did not like each other. And at the time, I had no idea what derivative meant. So this is where my research began. And then she said, and these two shall meet all at once, and the consequence shall be of catastrophic proportion. Derivatives shall meld and pull apart an already tipsy-topsy service system, right? So service system, banking, which will break apart, and there cannot be anything repairable. It will be dropped down underneath its capacity for self-governance, and shall be ripped asunder by more than one debtor nation looking for its recompense. So this affects the countries. So countries that cannot fulfill or have their silver orders fulfilled or whatever is, but I'm not, like I said, I'm not, as you and I said, we are both not financial so then the next piece I would love to bring into this, and I would love you to share the astrology, is she then goes into that this can possibly lead to a digital currency. So in my imaginings, the way this might happen is that we have this problem where all of a sudden the banks are short, they can't come up with the money, so they close their doors because they need our deposits to stay whole. They can't allow us to take our money out. And then the government steps in, and basically we feel like, oh my gosh, we don't have access to our money. We lost our money. And the government steps in and says, hey, I can get your money back. I'm the hero. I'm the government, but only if we move to a digital currency.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's your, and she says that here. She says, there shall not be a passageway within which the earth yields prosperity other than the refabrication of the entire financial system. This comes with relative ease, as the preparation has already begun, as that which has been thought of and brought forward will now be put into operation and made to serve as a positive expression of a new economic backdrop. So what did you get on this?
Okay, gosh, so much to say, because as I understand it, Anna, you know, you and I, as you say, are not financial people, but as I
Yeah.
understand it, this is very similar to what happened in 2008, the whole
Oh,
derivative thing. Because if you
yes,
watch
that was
that,
derivatives. Yeah.
because if you watch the movie, it's a brilliant movie called The Big Short.
Yes, I love that
Brilliant
movie.
short, and that describes exactly what was happening. But this is what we're going through now, and the issue. Well, I'd just like to take a step back for a second, because we just recently last week had the full supermoon in Cancer, and I was talking about that full supermoon was landing. It was 13 degrees of Cancer, was landing exactly on the sun in the USA chart.
Okay.
And then I looked at the chart for Venezuela, and Neptune, which undermines, dissolves, weakens, was directly opposing the sun, which is the leader, and the midheaven, which is the government of that country.
Oh
And
my
one of the
word.
main issues was oil. Neptune is oil.
Oh
And
my, you
Neptune
cannot make this stuff up.
is right on the world axis.
Wow.
So oil is going to be a really big deal, certainly for the next year or so.
Okay.
Um, there's so much I want to say, but anyway, going back to silver. Partly the reason I think the precious metals have leapt up is partly this, the unstable world situation. Iran is, in a very serious situation, but also on the 1st of January, China, which was a major exporter of silver, changed its rules to make silver, quote, a strategic reserve and
Yeah.
severely limit silver exports to other countries. And silver is more and more needed, not only as an investment, but also for industry, for iPhones, for medical technology, and also for AI data centers, which are kind of growing by the day. And, I know people have strong views either way on that. But that limitation from China has had major impact, which has fed what you were talking about with the short supply of
Yes.
silver. All of a sudden, the supply banks anticipated is no longer there as of the 1st of January. And that's why we saw leaps of up to 10% for the silver price in a day.
Wow.
And so the fact we have a Saturn-Neptune conjunction together, and that will continue until early April. Neptune, as I say, is oil. Saturn is the old world, the old structures, including banking. So
Okay.
we have a dissolution and undermining of all those old structures, be they government, be they corporations, be they banking, the banking system. So this is part of the big picture of what's happening right now. So Neptune right now is on that world axis, and Saturn will join it. In fact, Neptune moves exactly into zero of Aries on the 26th of January, and Saturn follows it, zero of Aries, on the 14th of February.
Okay.
Now, it's very interesting that they are going to be exactly on the sun, the leader, and the midheaven, the organization, the structure of the Federal Reserve, which was set up on the 23rd of December 1913. I
Okay.
understand just today that the US president has issued a legal investigation into Jerome Powell, who is
Yeah.
the son of the Federal Reserve, the midheaven, at zero of Aries, that Neptune is already there, going to be joined by Saturn. So, it's just
Wow.
absolutely incredible. The other important thing to know is Jupiter is an expansive principle. Jupiter has been in Cancer, the sign ruled by the moon, which is linked to silver, since June 2025. It is staying there in the sign of Cancer until July this year, 2026. So it has expanded the price of silver.
Wow.
That's partly what's helped to prop up the real estate market, because Cancer is also linked to homes, houses.
Oh, wow.
I think the growth of silver will continue because of the industrial metal and AI centers. It's just so needed. And also because of the wobbles in the world, people think I need to go to tangible assets. Again,
Yeah.
this is not financial advice. Please
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
But when it moves into Leo in July 26 and stays there till July 27, Leo is linked to gold. It's ruled by the
Oh my
sun.
gosh. Okay.
So, both silver and gold, in my very humble non-advisory capacity, I think we'll do well. And then it gets very interesting indeed when we get to the solar eclipse on the 17th of February. Now, that's the beginning of the year of the fire horse in Chinese astrology, when things start to leap ahead. That is at 28 of Aquarius, square to Uranus, and Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. Now, Aquarius and Uranus together are very linked to technology, digital. That solar eclipse is conjunct the moon in the US chart, which is the people becoming much more revolutionary. And the
Yes.
moon in the US chart rules the eighth house of investment in that country. Again, we're back to the worth of the dollar,
Oh,
investment in that
interesting.
country.
Interesting.
And so it's also, just by the way, right across the US president's health axis. And Leo Aquarius, is very linked to sort of heart and circulation. Anyway, we will see what unfolds with that. But
Oh my gosh, wait. I have to tell you, Pam, that I wasn't going to share it, but one of the messages mentions that as well, mentions the president's health, from 2020, one of them does. And yeah, so interesting that you bring that up. I wasn't even going to share it because I'm like, it's not on it's like, but it was like in the sequence of events that was in the same message. Wow.
Right. So also that solar eclipse, if I look at the chart for the New York Stock Exchange, which I found today, which was set up on the 17th of May, 1792, New York noontime, that has its sun at 27 of Taurus and its midheaven, the status of the New York Stock Exchange in the world, at 28 of Taurus. So this solar eclipse on the 17th of February squares, tension, a difficulty, that New York Stock Exchange chart. Also, Saturn will just have moved into Aries 3 days before. And the last time it was in Aries was 1997, 1998, when we had the dot-com bubble.
Wow.
So I'm anticipating in February, round about, anywhere from kind of mid-February onwards, there could be a market correction, particularly linked to tech stocks and AI stocks, is my humble interpretation. I don't think that's the big one. I think that's some kind of market correction around technological stocks, but it could also indicate solar eclipse as like a big new moon, a new beginning, a move towards greater digitization, which is what you're talking about. And just before I leave that bit and go and to give you a chance to speak, I will give you a chance to speak. No, fiat currencies in general, I think, will be under pressure, partly because Neptune in Aries is very inflationary.
Okay.
Now, Neptune is going to stay in Aries once it moves in on the 26th of Jan until 2033. And I
Okay.
mean 2033, a long time.
Yeah.
Saturn joins it and they stay tightly together till early April.
Okay.
Saturn moves faster, so Saturn moves on, but they are both what I call co-present in Aries. They're both in the same sign of Aries.
Okay, so
Saturn leaves Aries in April 2028. So Saturn is deflationary, Neptune is inflationary. And so I think Saturn will kind of, repress some of the highly inflationary expressions of Neptune. But after April this year, the inflation could start to rev up, which of course will devalue currencies. And once, well, who knows what the world's going to be in 2028? I mean, who knows
yes,
what it's going to be? But it will, because if I look at the chart, for instance, of the euro that was set up on 1st of January 1999, well, 1 minute into the day, Brussels, the the axes of the chart, which are the most important thing in any chart, are all at 29 degrees of the mutable signs, 29 degrees ascendant in Virgo, midheaven 29 degrees of Gemini. And what that means is that Neptune currently is pinging all those 4 angles of that chart. Neptune is undermining, weakening, dissolving. So I've been saying in several videos in the past, I think that will hit the euro currencies quite hard. And,
yes,
what you and I have just been saying about the dollar. So I think all fiat currencies will come under pressure because at the end of the day, in the bigger picture, this old world structure has to collapse, and fiat currencies
absolutely.
are not backed by anything. They're just, at the end of the day, bits of paper.
Right. And they effectively, because they allow inflation can't happen if it's tied to something tangible. Like when we had currencies tied to gold,
Yeah.
then you don't, inflation happens because the government creates increasing amounts of debt, which we call printing money. And they basically take your dollar and it's worth less and less and less. And I think it'll be interesting. So if this happens, which it may or may not, right? It may be that in terms of it's easy to misinterpret, and then as you say, timelines change, we don't know. But if it should happen, and if the banks close, and if the government says forward, and this could be in many places, because I think this is not just a US for sure, but I also think Euro, I think it's much wider and I think one of the causes could be this silver situation, but there is probably multifold. I have a very limited perspective because this is not my area of expertise, but if it was to happen, if the government came forward and said, hey, we can get you onto a digital currency. If the banks are closed, you can't access your money. Imagine how freaked out you'd be if you didn't have a little bit on the side. Like, I got to buy my groceries. What am I going to do? The government says, we will solve the problem. We'll put everybody on a digital currency and you'll get all your money back. But then within a very short period of time, that money, what we would recognize it as rapid inflation, which is in fact, and I think people don't always make the connection, it is in fact the value of the dollar going down. And it could go down, or the euro, whatever, it could go down dramatically. But we would be so happy just to have our money back. We'd be like, oh, phew, isn't that so great? And I think this is, I think, and here's something that really strikes me is that the United States is like, our country is really like the debt is overwhelming. It's reached a point now where it is impossible for us to pay it back. It's gone beyond the pale. There's no possible way we could ever pay the debt. So when this happens, and it's happened many times to countries, and it's almost like a predictable pattern that you can see in countries that become like a reserve currency, that sort of have this sort of empire mentality, and then they end up outspending. They have tons of money, but they spend more than they have. So they go into deep, deep, deep debt. And then they have 2 choices. The choice is either to default or to devalue the currency. Because if you devalue the currency, if they have their debt, say that you owe $100, and then all of a sudden that $100 is worth less, if instead of buying 1 loaf of bread, your $100 buys 2 loaves of bread, if the government devalues their debt, all of a sudden, then it's back under control. It's back where they can continue to function. So there's reasons, like deep reasons, why this could be happening, where I would say, is it a coincidence that this would help the US government so much? Probably not. I'm not a big believer in coincidences. You know what I mean? I think, okay, if you hear hoofbeats, think horses.
Absolutely. And remember that new moon in Capricorn which is a new beginning, on the 18th of January is conjunct the US Pluto, which is linked to the value of the dollar because it's in the second house, and it's to do with debt,
Oh my
default,
gosh.
and taxes.
Wow.
Okay, so we'll just see what happens. And just to say also, there's a new moon on the 19th of March. at 28 degrees of Pisces, 28 degrees of the mutables, where Neptune is right now. So again, there might be some development, particularly I'm thinking of the euro there. And it may also be linked to oil because that's Neptune again.
Okay. Okay.
So I, in my humble view, would see some market correction around about February, March, that is more likely, in my humble view, to be AI or tech bubble, but may also bring in the potential for more digitization. And just to add what Anne's been saying, yes, the government may come in and say, don't worry, all your money's still there, don't worry, it's all there. But it is now in a different form, which is a centralized digital currency.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just ask people to use great discernment as to whether that is a good idea for them. That's all
Yeah.
I'm
I
saying.
will share, and this was not something that I got for like when this message came through, it was for me specifically. So one day I was just channeling for myself, and it was the angels that came through, and this was maybe even a year ago that I got this message. Somewhere in that time, I'm not good with time, somewhere it was many months ago, many moons ago, and they said that there would be they would be one digital currency that would come forward. And at the time, I had no interest in digital currency. I was very like I just didn't resonate with me at all. So I didn't own any crypto, nothing. And I had never even spent a minute learning about it. And so it shocked me when this came through because it just was like out of the blue. And they said there will be a digital currency. They said the one that everyone agrees on. And they said, for me specifically, they said when it happens that I should move into that currency 100%. And the reason they gave is that for me, they said one of the issues I have with my work is how do I try to share it around the world in countries where the dollar is very strong and other currencies are very weak. And they said that when we move to this one world currency, it levels the playing field and it will make it easier for me to be able to run my work and pay the people that help me, and then also be able to share it more broadly, just to be able to make it competitively or affordable for other countries. So they said, yeah, jump in. They said for me, but that's a very me specific message, which is why I didn't share it, because it might not be the same advice for everyone, because there's going to be positives and negatives about this as people are concerned about their privacy. But that was why the angels told me to do it. So anyway, so I will be if and when this happens, I will be on board. But that is why, is because it will help me to be of greater service to a broader audience.
That's great. That's great. I mean, I know, just to admit, I know nothing about cryptocurrencies. I'm just completely L plates, completely, ignorant about that. So I can't give any advice. So please don't write and ask me for advice. I know nothing. But my sense is, yes, I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes with a global currency that may be backed by something. I think there's a lot happening. I have no information on that, no insider information, so I can't comment on that. But I also do think going forwards there are going to be even microcurrencies. There's going to be a way, because the whole Aquarian urge at its best is decentralization.
Oh,
Capricorn is centralization. We're
yes.
moving into much more Aquarian energy, which is decentralized. It's grassroots, it's communities, it's mycelium, it's tree roots, it's people connecting on information. Hey, have you heard about this? This is a great way to go, to keep things very private. And I just heard, and I don't know what the brand or the manufacturer is, but I just heard a couple of days ago that there's a phone now which doesn't have to send the calls via the network or cell
Hmm.
towers. There is
Hmm.
a phone to phone.
Yeah, they call it a mesh network. And because I
Ah,
looked into this a long time ago, it's very interesting, but you have to have a lot of density for it to work. There has to be people have to be very close by because you ping off each other's phones. So it's
okay.
a
Well, that's
super cool idea.
Aquarian. That's Aquarian. It's localized. That's
Yeah.
a local network. Aquarius, it's
Yeah.
all about local networks.
Wow. Isn't that amazing?
They're going to be there are going to be so many innovations. I mean, Anne and I may be talking about the challenging side today, but just know all the other stuff we talk about. There are going to be so many innovations, so many new
Yes.
medical technology, healing technologies, miracles. We're shifting our consciousness. We're
Oh my
moving
God.
to the light body. Don't forget, all of that in the midst of this conversation
It's
today, which
incredible, right? I mean, like, and that's the thing that I keep coming back to is I'm kind of sharing the tidbits that relate to what we see happening in the world right now, which is this potential that we are heading into. It sounds like February, March, April, like this. There is the possibility that the astrology is lining up with some of these messages that have been coming through for the last really since 2020. But the big emphasis is always on like, how are we going? We're meant to thrive through this, and that anything that we lose is stuff that we were not meant to, that was holding us back in one way or another, and that we really have everything we need inside of us. And it's really interesting, like Mother Creation describes beautifully this actual separation that happens. And I've seen more, I'm not the only one. And I know, we both have talked about this sort of division of perspectives where we could be living and sharing the same earth for a while, but some people will be experiencing it as a world of constriction, and other people will be experiencing it as a world of possibility, endless possibility, and creation, which is the new energy. There's I thought it was really interesting talking about the Aquarius energy you were talking about, and the moving things out, and more separate. How did you describe that? You said it was rather than having really centralized things, it was decentralized.
decentralized. Yeah,
And
yeah.
she mentioned this in the second channeling. She says, you can and will house for yourselves a period of calm and peace within which prosperity can build again. There will be a time within which you may find your local economies gathering themselves to themselves, finding their needs met, prosperity found in the nations of your own neighborhood. There shall be prosperity within barter and exchange, as well as in service to others. You shall find yourselves in a period of spiritual upliftment that does buoy the neighborhood as well as the nation. Fear not this game afoot. Fear not that the economy has been the plaything of those in power, for these are the systems brought down in this time period of great surrender to all things. And you shall, as a result, be brought forward into more peace, less hesitation, and a greater fruition of your potential. You shall find yourselves encapsulated in a period of opportunity wherein your needs can be met in new ways through new efforts of sharing and bettering one another's lives. All will come to terms with itself in good favor, without fear, should you choose to open your hearts to the potential for something unexpected and yet welcome. Isn't that
Yeah,
cool?
yeah, it's beautiful, and I truly believe that's where we're headed. So, I feel, Anne, in sharing this, that I'm kind of using an old map, as it were, because there's a new map already, and it's coming in waves of higher and higher light codes and higher consciousness all the way through this year. But I'm still focused on the old map, so I haven't yet hatched a kind of futuristic astrology. So please be aware of that, people.
Yes.
A few months down the road, we could be in such a different place. We could be
Yes.
manifesting our light body in so much bigger, this is just kind of fading into dust in the
Yeah.
background. So
Yeah.
please be aware of that,
Yeah, and I think it is, yeah, that there's a ton of energetic support for us. And I think it's natural. People worry about, like, fear is a natural human emotion. We have it. And I think the thing that gives me peace is that what Isla and what the angels have been saying is, if you feel fear, don't then get freaked out because you're in fear. Like, don't worry, like, oh my gosh, I'm on the wrong train because I'm in fear and I'm going in the bad. No, like, it's the idea is, you might feel, fear might come into your mind at different times, but then if you sit in meditation and you're able to move into gratitude and feel those positive feelings for 5 minutes, those 5 minutes are going in to build the new reality. And so don't worry. In other words, don't sit there and judge yourself about, like, I'm scared, because some of this, I understand. It's one thing to say, don't be afraid. Well, what do I do with that? How do I not be afraid? If I am, what do I do? And I think we have to get to the place where increasingly we start to experiment with manifesting in this new way, which is really about opening. It's not the old way of manifesting, where it was really about the old way of manifesting looked more like control, because we were so busy with hold, like, this is what I want, and I'm going to hold it as if it already exists, and I'm going to feel it now like I've already have it. Like, think about how controlling we are of that experience. We're really condensing down and constricting the flow of what's coming through us, trying to turn it in to the specific cookie cutter that we want. Whereas in the new way of manifesting, it's not that. In the new reality, it's about It's about trying to trust what's inside of us and we're trying to do that. It only works because we're trying to create from the now moment only, not from our baggage, from our fully as evolved as we have become in the moment. We're trying to create from just that. And we're trying to trust it, trust who we are, the love inside of us, and just to open and let it emerge into a new reality. So it's much less work, right? It's everything becomes about allowing. And so it's the same with this whole idea of fear. Fear makes sense if you are trying super hard to control, right? Because then we're trying to direct it. And we're like, well, I must not, there's like anxiety comes from the feeling that there's something you have to do and you don't know what it is. And so if you feel like you have to be in charge, this part has to be in charge of creating your safety, that's a terribly anxious creating experience. But if we can slowly evolve to the place where we say, I don't have to control it, that's actually against that actually constricts my energy, that actually limits the potential of what I can be. Instead, if I say, okay, I'm going to trust who I am. And if I create something I don't like, if I'm riding the wave in this new wave, no problem. I can change it like that. I can change it in the very next minute. So it's getting to that space of flow and allowing in all things. And to me, that is the ultimate pathway out of fear, which we're all striving to become. This is the shift of consciousness. This is what we're trying to do. Yeah, it's so exciting.
And also I think, and I know Anne has talked about this, and I've certainly talked about it, that as we go forwards this year, our realities can be more malleable, more fluid, etc. So I'm using old language with an old map because that's the only reference points we have, because the future is so much more invisible and we don't have the vocabulary yet fully to describe that incredible invisible potential of the light body, and we're quite limited in that. So, please know that, but also know local networks are big, big, big. It's very
Mm.
interesting. We've got a repeat at the moment with Pluto and Aquarius of what we had in 1789 with the French Revolution, when, the peasants stormed the Bastille and took down the monarch, and the monarch was beheaded, and that was the end of the French monarchy. And within a month, the Assemblée Nationale, which was incredible, within a month, published something called the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which gave legal rights to ordinary people. And from that time, small farms started, small artisan businesses. People came together in their local communities. And that was the very beginning of a middle class, because previously it had been the rulers and the ruled, the monarchy and the peasants. But
Mhm.
now it was the beginning of democracy across Europe, actually, but it was the beginning of a middle class, of local networks of people. And that's one of the big things going forwards. Form local networks.
Yeah.
Don't maybe stop shopping at your supermarket, find your local farmers market,
Yes.
befriend your local neighbors, find a like-minded group, grow your own vegetables, get into
Find the
permaculture.
zucchinis inside of you.
Absolutely. Decouple from the system as much as you are able,
Yeah.
become more self-sufficient in whatever way. If you're self-employed, that's a big step in that direction. Try and organize your finances so they aren't fully in that whole old word system. But
Yeah.
if we can move on now to July, because July is a
Ooh,
big,
exciting. Okay, yes.
July
I
is a
didn't know
big,
there was more. Okay, let's keep
oh
going.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
So July I see as the second correction, and quite a
Oh,
significant correction.
okay. Oh, I didn't realize. Okay.
Because I'm following here the synodic cycle of Jupiter and Pluto, which are to do with wealth. And there were some issues, as I remember, back in 2020 when we had the pandemic and stock markets went down, but there were some issues around regional US banks at that time. And then and that was the conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto. And then at the square, the 90-degree angle, which was in 2023, there were issues, as I remember, about Credit Suisse. Was it First Republic Bank or the Republic
Yep.
First Bank?
Yep.
Silicon
I
Valley
used to
Bank.
bank at that bank eons ago. I banked at First Republic. Yeah.
So again, US regional banks issue at the square. Now in July 2026, we're coming up to the opposition, another hard aspect between Jupiter and Pluto. So for me, that could spark some kind of issue around the banks, because it's about wealth. Because
Okay.
if we're just following those steps through, the conjunction, the square, and then the opposition,
Oh,
normally it's step by step. There's an echo of what came before in that current cycle. I think that would be a bigger correction, and in my humble view. And then in September, we've got Pluto square Venus, and that's always quite hard on wealth in general. And then 3rd of October to the 14th of November, Venus goes retrograde and in the sign of Scorpio. And the sign of Scorpio is about investment, big money, investment money, institutional money. And when Venus is retrograde, i.e., going backwards, apparently, it's an optical illusion, but from the perspective of the Earth, wealth generally tends to be a bit deflated.
Got it.
And the other thing that's happening between July and September this year is the planet Chiron, which is to do with wounding, enters the sign of Taurus, which again is ruled by Venus, to do with wealth. So from about July onwards, there's some astrological indicators of possibly a bigger correction. And
Wow.
so, and then it's really those last few months of the year. I'm thinking September, October, which are classic time for a bigger stock market crash, always historically. September, October, November kind of time. Where it gets tougher. I also think that's a much more revolutionary time, because I was speaking to a US astrologer, Rosie Finn, and I know several of you have seen that. And she spent 20 years doing this huge research project on the orbit of Pluto going back over 4,000 years. And what she found was, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but what she found was when Pluto's orbit moves beyond 23 degrees of the ecliptic band to the south of the ecliptic, that people become much more revolutionary. She's massive, research project, as I say.
Wow.
So they become much more revolutionary to challenge a centralized system. And that happened last year. I mean, look what's happening across the world already, but that will become more intense between August and December again this year.
Interesting.
So, I think all of this, we are going to reach a tipping point with so many people waking up with these new waves of consciousness,
Yeah.
that people are going to say, do you know what? We can create a much more loving world. And
Yes.
that's what Anne and I spend a lot of time, we could make, because it isn't the people that want war and starvation and misery and destitution. It's
No,
not the people.
no.
And so, my humble view would be reduce your dependence on the system as far as you're able,
Mm-hmm.
form local networks, know that this old system has to collapse and we have to witness it. So we're not going to do it again, that
Yeah.
we create something that's much more loving and much healthier. Develop skills that other people need. I mean, if,
Yes.
I've got no earth in my chart virtually, so I'm absolutely hopeless on that. If you're a carpenter, a gardener, a cook, whatever, they are really good skills. I do think, and this isn't financial advice, that investing in tangibles as
Yes.
opposed to fiat currency just feels more reliable.
Intangibles meaning precious metals. And then the one thing I would say about investing in precious metals is that if somebody is trying to buy, you can buy physical gold or silver or other metals like that, which where you actually hold it in your hand. You can also get digital versions of that. Some of those digital versions are like derivatives. So you need to be really careful about what, so there are some that you can buy that are digital assets. So for example, there's a company called Sprott that does like Sprott physical gold and Sprott physical silver, SPROTT. And like I said, not a financial advisor, not financial advice, just sharing some information that may or may not be useful. But it's called allocated. Basically you give them $1 and they buy $1 of gold and put it in a vault, and it's like allocated and it's like your name on it and it's yours. And so it's convenient because you can actually have that. Like if you say, for example, you have some money stashed away in a 401k, you can actually put it into gold using one of these tools. And Sprott, I don't think Sprott's the only one. It's just an example. But what you don't want to do is get the ones that are like it's not allocated, because those are like derivatives, and we already know that there's a short on silver. There's not enough to go around. And so what will happen is you will, anyways, it could go in a direction you don't like as potential. So just to mention that for people who are thinking about it, but having something in your hot little hand, having some physical, they call it junk silver. If you get like, and you want it like 90% or better, it just means like old, like in the US, we have silver dimes and silver quarters. They used to actually put silver in the money. And if you don't want those stuff that's less than 70%, and this is, I've learned all about all this, that if it's less than 90% silver in the coin, you will have a hard time selling it back to like a coin dealer, because the smelters can't smelt it and get the silver out of it as easily, so they won't buy it. So don't fall for that. Only do 90% silver on the junk silver. And then it's wonderful because you can say, for example, if there's some uncertainty about the local currency, if you're holding some of that, say you have some silver dimes, that is, you can spend it, you can buy money, you can buy things with it, and it's going to hold its value regardless of what sort of topsy-turvy period we are in, as she said.
It's yeah, really good point, Anne, because not all, but some silver and some gold coins are legal currency.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that differs by country, so check your own national
yeah,
regulations, but it's actually legal currency.
yeah.
So that would be, that'd be handy to have. And, small denominations, if you just want to go to a grocery store for bread and milk, you can't go,
Yeah.
a gold bar. Just kind of be practical about it. But do know that all that Anne and I are sharing has to happen. That's part of the astrology. It's part of Anne's channeling messages that she's brought through so beautifully. And all of this is just going to disappear black and white and then into dust,
Yeah.
as we are so excited about meeting with our angels, our galactic family, the pixies, the elms, talking to the tree beings.
Yeah.
It's going to fade into, gosh, how did we ever be, so focused on all that old stuff? It
Yeah.
will just go to dust. So keep your focus on what we're creating magnificently
Yeah.
in New Earth. And New Earth is, remember, is what we are becoming. It's an embodiment of a frequency. It's what we're becoming. It's not an out there, it's an in here.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Do you know, and I hate to go from that lovely high note to one other thought about something that we should be aware of, but I
No,
didn't want to
please.
leave it out, which is that one thing that the angels mentioned, or no, it was I don't know if it was Isla or the angels who mentioned it. I think it was probably, I don't know. Anyways, they gave several months ago, it came through that there is an earth rift, a big earth opening, the big earth event that they've never given, they rarely give me timings, very rarely, but this time they actually said it would be within a 1 year anniversary. And
Oh,
so sometime in the next year there could be a very dramatic earth event. And it's actually mentioned that, and it was always said when I've been channeling this stuff, they always pooled the events together, and they said the time that we have this economic stuff happening, they said all of it, well, it'll be like they use the word cacophony, like it would be, which is like a bunch of voices all talking at once. It will be many things happening in the same time period. And then the good news, we get through this period, and then that opens us up to the flash of light, which is this massive influx of energy that really boosts us into the higher state of consciousness, which is like, yay. But the earth rift, not so easy. But it is, my understanding is it's really important because it's part of what sort of cracks open the earth and lets the light in for Gaia herself, because it's her healing moment. It's her moment to let out, to heal. And so they said it would be within the next potential, and this is always, things can change, it could be within the next year. But in this beginning of this channeling, they mention it again. They say there shall be or this is Isla, there shall be a great earthing of eventual force, which shall break apart and shatter the earth in many places. So when I first channeled it, they talked about the Indian Ocean, but I think it's the vision I get is like just a lot of plate movement. And so the thing I have suggested and that I'm holding is that we don't want to stop the earth from having her moment because it's her healing, but we can potentially soften it and hopefully prevent it from being quite as bad by offering presence, which is very healing. It's almost like you have a child who needs to get out an emotion, who needs to throw a fit for a minute. If you sit in loving presence and just shine love at that child, the child doesn't hold the tantrum nearly as long, right? They slowly soften, and then they end up like a little puddle in your arms, And that's, I think we want to try to, that's my feeling, is that we have the potential to be of service, to try to make, if there is a moment that Gaia needs, that she needs to shift some things around and needs to release, that we just try to do our best to hold her in the light and to send her loving presence. I know
And
what you feel.
I think, and they were saying that you, I think your understanding was it would happen before this August, because they said something about within the next 12 months or something. Do you remember we had a conversation about
Yes,
that?
yes, yeah. So, and I don't know, like I have to go back and see when the message, you probably remember the date much better than I do, but it was whatever time they said it would be with like within this yearly anniversary was the term that they
That's it.
used.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know, I don't remember exactly when it came through. So sometime, so this could all kind of be, so when I think about that July date and think about the banks and think about, and then as a part of all this, there's other stuff that is in, that I just kind of was peeking at in the book. They did talk about, like, there's messages in here about, in terms of preparing, that it's a great idea to have, like, I love what they say here about what should we do? Like, how do we move through this? Number one is absolutely do the cash thing, like have some small bills. Everybody can, and everybody, you have to leave in the bank what you need to like make your life go. You got to leave enough money to cover your bills, but maybe think about some precious metals, and think about having some low value bills that you can use to kind of pay for things. And then here's a message that came in. This one is from, sorry, it's a long one. Let me just find the original date. It was January 26th. And this is in this book, this same What's Coming Next book. And it is on page 147. It will be a time of difficulty and you must prepare. You must have for yourselves ways and methods of preparing for being, ways of feeding and housing that will not require payment of any kind. Storage of foodstuffs is important, dears. Storage of self-preservation. What do you need? What do you require? Have this. Be prepared in this method, not too extreme. Have no more than you wish to consume yourselves and share with others, but not more than that. Do not take on the burden of too many things, of too much, for this will weigh you down and transfer your consciousness into fear and survival. And this is this we wish not. Only to have abundance of thought, abundance of plenty, and no more. And so it's that idea of, like, I keep saying, have a big bag of rice and a big bag of beans, because that is usually within most people's budget. You can buy them in bulk. You can get a 25-pound bag, of rice, like, and the thing is, rice doesn't go bad. Like, you can have it and stick it somewhere safe. You want to freeze it is the only thing, because if you leave rice to sit for a long time, you'll get little bugs in it. But if you freeze it, it kills the eggs and you won't have that problem. But yeah, so she freeze the rice and then a big bag of beans. And then, and if, I mean, obviously if you have the resources to do something that's more to your liking, great. But I suggest that because I feel like it's accessible to everyone. And then just set that aside. And the idea is that if things go bonkers, the idea is you want to be able to stay in your own high vibe. You don't want to be down at Walmart with everybody else trying to buy the last bottle of olive oil. You want to be at home and be like, okay, this is going to pass, and I have what I need to get through, kind of a little bit of a period, and it's going to be, and I know we're heading into this lovely, lovely thing where we're heading.
Yeah, we are just absolutely on the precipice of this. And I'd also say, if you have canned food at home as well, which
Yes.
is a great idea, have a manual can opener
Oh my gosh, yes.
in case power goes out. Because
Yes.
yourself if you only have an electric can opener.
Yes, that, and then a way to light. Like, I think having lights is so helpful mentally, to be able to sit in the dark just makes you feel bad. You know what I mean? In a home, like if you've ever had a power outage, the first thing you reach for is, how do I light my home? It just gives you such a feeling of comfort. So yeah, having a reliable, it's so funny. I thought I was so like prepared. I had all the stuff, I had the lanterns and I had all the stuff, and I had just moved into this house, and then we had a power outage and I couldn't find any of it. And I was like, okay, note to self, I can be as prepared as I want, but if it's buried away in a box somewhere, it does me, and it's dark, it does me no good. So
That's
yeah.
brilliant, actually. Yeah, so a few torches around the place, which are super cheap. I've also bought from Amazon just a one-ring camping stove.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
bit,
Wonderful.
super cheap. And also I've got a camping bottle which filters up to, I think, 50,000 liters of water that you can
Oh,
take from a river or a stream. And that was
yes.
about £12, like $15,
I love
not
it.
expensive, but you'll be so grateful if by any chance you need it, then there's no panic. You know,
That
your
is
capital.
beautiful. I love that. The last thing I would add to that about the water is that the one thing that angels talked about, and it's so amazing to see it happening, is there's messages, tons of messages that's been coming in, through this book, talking about flooding and about water. And they talked about, yes, waves, and they said rivers overflowing. Well, I know, I live in the Northwest.
Yeah.
I live right by a big river. The valley, literally right below my house, was historic flooding, a massive valley that turned into a lake where everything in the valley was underwater. And it's literally like it was down my hill and I could see it. It was insanity. And of course lots of property damage and some injuries and challenges, big challenges for people. But one of the reason I bring that up is because one of the other things that we would get consistently is please have a way to clean your water of viruses specifically. And so there's not all filters, like a Brita filter does not filter for viruses. So and there's a lot of different methods out there depending on where you live. Different countries have different products available. You just do a little Google search. You can check here in the US, you can check at REI. There's a lot of like backpacking equipment that cleans out where you could literally drink right out of a river. There's even ones you can travel with that filter viruses. But the key is you want it not just cleaning the water of bacteria, like it's viruses specifically, they say. So just a good idea, something to plan ahead, a few things you can do. And the idea, like they said, is not to go so far that it puts you in the mindset of panic, but to the degree that it gives you the peace of mind that you recognize that, so what if you have to eat beans and rice for a couple of weeks? Anybody can get through that. And then maybe you have some spices too, and then on the other side, and the whole time we are focusing on our sense of allowing and letting what's happening unfold, realizing we are shedding the things which have actually been holding us back. It's like, imagine that 9 to 5 job that someone stays in their whole lives because they are afraid that without it they won't be okay, until finally it's taken away from them. And then all of a sudden it opens up a pathway for them to start on a path that's actually what they've always wanted to do or what they always wanted to be. And their life transforms, right? And they thought when they were in that job, they just grabbed it and hold it so tight, and then when it's finally taken from them, they realize that it was a prison and now they're free. And I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah, I think I am super excited, despite all of this, about 2026. I think it's the beginning. I've said this in a couple of videos. I think it's the beginning of our real lives now. Whatever age you're at, and I'm not a young person, but I think this is really the beginning of my life. And I think that will be true for everybody who's excited about what's to come.
I love it. I absolutely love it. That sounds amazing. Oh, Pam, well, thank you I was so amazed when I'm always amazed when I hear your videos, but that one really, I was like, oh my gosh, it sounded so much like, then you can just sharing the messages. I find it's exciting. I love sharing it with you because I feel like you and I both really share the same perspective that, this is a moment and we can get through it with ease and grace. And to me, I see it as evidence that the new reality is here. The new reality is starting all around us, and we're getting closer and closer. And as that happens, it is natural that the old is going to break down and fall away, and because we don't need it anymore. So exciting.
So excited. So stay in that mindset, expect wonderful things in 2026.
Yay.
Thank you so much, Anne. Loved it. We went over the jumps pretty quickly there, but I absolutely loved it. There was so much, a kind of synchronization between our two different sets of information. It was beautiful. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I've loved it.
Me too. Thank you so much, Pam. We will talk again soon. Tons of love to you and to everyone. Thank you guys, and see you guys
Loads of
soon.
love, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.